Hello everyone, this is Etsy Shadow and welcome to the first episode of SecTalks. We have a special personality with us today. Some know him as a creator of Autorecon, some know him by his Linux and Windows prowess for OSCP and Beyond courses. He is a cybersecurity expert, penetration tester, teacher, and most importantly, active contributor to the community. Let's welcome Tiberius. So, how are you doing, Tiberius?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine as well. So, my first question to you is how you got this chiseled rock like profile picture?
Google. I think
Oh,
I'm pretty sure it's a common Creative Commons licensed image from Wikimedia, I think. So and then I just edited it to put some nerd glasses on it, I guess.
okay, so that's really unique profile picture. I've never seen such thing on a penetration tester profile.
Yeah, I mean, I figured I chose the name Tiberius just because I liked it. And then obviously it's a pretty famous Roman emperor, so I figured that would be a good avatar.
Okay, so next thing is how you started off in cybersecurity and why you choose penetration testing specifically.
That's a good question. Yeah, so I mean, this goes way back to when was it? 2007, I think. So I went to college to do computer science, and then in second year, going into second year, they were like, you need to choose like something to minor in, and information security was one of the modules that the college I went to was pretty famous for at the time. So I figured, that sounds interesting. And so I did that in my second year and third year. And by the end of third year, I was like, okay, this is something I want to do full time. So I ended up doing a master's in information security at the same college. And from then on, I always describe it, I kind of accidentally fell into pen testing. My first job was literally just writing these checks for an auditing application. And I did that for 6 months. And then they said, oh, we can't really afford to give you like a full contract, but we'll keep you on a monthly rolling contract. And I was like, okay. But in the background, I was basically looking for pen testing jobs. So I found luckily a company that would take me on as a junior pen tester with absolutely no experience, which I know is is not heard of these days, unfortunately. But this
Yeah.
was back in 2011. It was very different. So yeah, I guess they took a risk, and it turned out well. And I've been a pen tester ever since.
Yeah, in most of the cases nowadays, organizations are not considering freshers because they are thinking that they might screw up things. So that was the case in your as well, and but you turned out to be good as well.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. Obviously, pen testing it can be destructive, so
Yeah,
that's the problem. But I just think there's so much demand these days that companies have to really take a more relaxed approach. I think as long as you have a good training period, you should be fine.
yeah, totally. So next thing is, can you do your name reveal? Like all of us only know you by your nickname that is Tiberius, but no one knows your real name. So are you comfortable revealing that?
Not right now. I think I'll
Oh,
pass on that one.
yeah,
Sorry to be
yeah.
a disappointment. Yeah, maybe one day. There are people who know who I am just because I've done my like face reveal. So obviously there's people in the industry who know who I am. Uh, but right now I think I still like kind of having the privacy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No issues on that one, but definitely I'm waiting to know your real name. I tried finding you on LinkedIn, but that was not the case with your nickname.
Yeah, I
Okay,
really
moving.
hate using LinkedIn.
Yeah, moving on. So apart from Auto Recon, have you created any other tools?
Yeah, none that are really that public. Um, so I mostly create burp extensions for stuff I do at work. Because obviously I'm pretty much 95% doing web apps these days. And so Burp Suite Pro is like pretty much the main tool in my arsenal. And it's great, but there are some web apps you come across where you just need something extra. So I've created quite a few Burp extensions just for custom applications that I just need to do something weird that Burp Suite doesn't really handle.
Okay.
I do have one that is in the BAP store, so I guess I guess my name is technically in there somewhere. I won't tell you which one it is, but yeah, there's one that's published. There's a few that just are random. I actually have a plan to publish another one, probably under my Tiberius handle, but that should be coming up soon. Other than that, I don't think I really have many apps. I'll occasionally create an app for a specific vulnerability that's come out. But again, so I'll have something quick in Python. But most of the time, I don't publish those at all.
Oh, okay. That's great. So, is there any upcoming new courses or tools that you're working on?
Yeah, so both actually. So I'm currently kind of trying to balance my time between improvements to my original previous courses, a new web application penetration testing course, and obviously Auto Recon version 2. So that's pretty
Oh,
much the
that's
three
great.
things I'm doing.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. I'm just literally waiting for some updates.
Yeah, they'll be coming soon, I think, on at least one of those, maybe
Yeah.
two.
So people make life day in a life of software engineer, day in a life of this profession and that profession. So I would like to know what is your day in a life of a penetration tester.
That's a good question. It really depends on the day. um, but overall, I mean, if you're starting a new test, then obviously you're going to be communicating with the customer. Um, Really, in my line of work with web apps, obviously the first day is usually just exploring the application itself and seeing exactly what kind of requests are being sent. So working mostly out of Burp. Um, yeah, so we may have a kickoff call for a customer for an upcoming engagement. So that can be generally either like a scoping call, like if it's quite a few months off, where we would just go over the application and try and come up with a scope of a number of days that we think is appropriate. Or if the test is like, the next week or the week after, we would basically just go over what we need for access, make sure we have access, any tricky things in the application that we need to know about. But for the most part, I'm probably just working out of Burp Suite, actually testing the application, finding vulnerabilities, keeping notes.
Yeah.
And then obviously you got to occasionally have the boring part of pen testing, which is writing up the reports, which can either be a easy job or if you found 30 so instances of something, then that can be a pain sometimes. Like the other day, I think I found 19 separate instances of authorization issues. And I'm lucky because I work at a company where they're like, you don't have to technically report, every single instance. You can just list them. But with authorization issues, I tend to write them up because they're just so complicated sometimes. So that was that was a lot of writing.
Okay, that's great. So, what is your most unique experience ever in your cybersecurity career?
Yeah. Ooh. I think possibly. I think I've talked about this one in several interviews. Um,
Okay.
it was a very strange SQL injection. Um, it was a blind SQL injection on. I mean, it was kind of cheating because it was legacy ASP. It wasn't even ASPX.
Okay.
But it was blind, so I was able to get some data out of it by SQL map. Um, but then I found that it was an MSQL database, and XP underscore command shell was enabled, but it was still blind. So it was like you could issue a sleep statement, and that would work. You could see that come. You could see that basically sleeping in the background, um, and so you could also get DNS. You can make DNS requests from the operating system via XP underscore command shell. So by doing a NS lookup. So I was able to get DNS. I couldn't connect back on anything. Like pretty much every single port was blocked. So it was using some internal DNS server, which obviously had a route out to the internet. And so I was like, I could have stopped there and said, okay, well, clearly I can get OS execution. But what I decided to do was dive in, and I found that PowerShell was actually running, or it was installed. And so I wrote this one-line PowerShell script, which executed a command, took the output, converted it to hex, and then split the hex into, I think it was 16-byte strings, and then sent them as a series of DNS requests to a DNS server that I had. And so I recorded the incoming requests, extracted the hex, joined it all back up, and decoded it, and was like, yeah, here we go. So I did Who Am I, and I was running a system, which was even better. So that was a fun report. But that was, yeah, pretty much like what I call a super blind SQL injection to remote command execution. Just because literally I couldn't get any shell back. Everything was being blocked apart from DNS, and I was able to exfiltrate data using that. I don't think I found anything better than that in my career.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, it was pretty
So,
fun.
yeah. So, can you share some advice for beginners in penetration testing?
Ask questions. A lot of people, you have seniors on the team, and honestly, I'm a firm believer that seniors should be mentoring the juniors, and you shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. You might get a snarky response, if a senior thinks a junior should expect to know that. But I would just try and not be afraid of asking questions, even if they seem stupid, because that's really how you're going to learn. Especially if you're like shadowing a senior on a job and they get some kind of shell somehow. The way I learned initially was, I would just basically, this was obviously before COVID. We were on site together. I would like slide my chair over and be like, okay, how can you show me how you got that shell? And the guy would, and I'd be like, thank you, and then slide back over to my laptop, and try it myself. So I think that's really how you've got to learn, is just don't be afraid to ask questions and try and learn as much from the seniors, and hopefully they're going to be good about sharing their knowledge with you.
Yeah, totally. So, cybersecurity is one of your key skills, but I would like to know that what do you like to do outside cybersecurity? Like if there are any hobbies or interest of yours?
Um, I like to say cybersecurity is my hobby as well, but no, I like bike riding. I like going hiking. I'm kind of weirdly kind of an outdoors person. Not for the most part, but I guess more than I guess people would expect. So I do like going outside. But other than that, I like general hobbies, gaming. I'm pretty good PC gamer, Xbox gamer as well. So I enjoy stuff like that. But I'd say most of my hobbies involve either going hiking or biking. I just like getting outdoors for a bit.
Yeah, that's great. You play PC games, so do you have any favorites?
Right now, Civilization 6. is a big favorite of mine. So that's a game I mean, you literally have to spend like 5 or 6 hours on. Just if anyone's played Civilization 6, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, a standard game can last that long. Um, Other than that, um, I actually recently just started playing because it was on sale on Steam. The Myst game, which, if people remember Myst, it was a puzzle-solving game from the 90s.
Yeah,
And this is a remake of it. So I've kind of just started playing that just for some nostalgia.
that's great.
Next me.
Next question is kind of concern. So, you know that many automated tools are already available, like SQL Map and Metasploit, Burp Suite Automated Vulnerability Scanner. So, whenever people start off in cybersecurity, they usually learn these tools, and most of the people don't even think about the manual testing part. So, is automated scripts and tools good for beginners with no hands off knowledge of manual testing or not?
Um, they are useful, obviously, as tools, but I would definitely recommend um, trying the manual way first. Um, in some instances, obviously, it really depends because if you're on a test and it's time limited, then it's difficult, right? Because take SQL map, for example. To exfiltrate data using a blind time-based SQL injection manually, um, nobody does that. You know, it takes too long. It's just difficult. You're editing the queries all the time. Um, there's a reason we use SQL map for that because it can do it really well. Um, However, there are, and this is where I think Portswigger Web Academy comes in.
Yeah,
Uh, is there are a lot of manual SQL injections there, and I'm not sure if you know Rana Khalil.
yeah, I know.
She's a Canadian pen tester. She's doing a web series right now on YouTube where she's going over um, the Web Security Academy labs, and I think she's just finishing SQL injection. So I would definitely recommend watching her videos as well, because she obviously goes over the manual stuff, and I think she's also writing custom scripts to automate it at the end. But definitely, I would recommend, everyone should know how to do it manually, at least the theory behind it. And the theory is pretty interesting. So there's definitely an advantage to knowing how to do it manually, even if you actually never do it in the field manually. Because generally speaking, you can just use SQL map. Even if there's a WAF or something, you can always hide SQL map's signature.
Yeah. Next question is a big thing. So, what is your opinion about cybersecurity certificate?
Certifications.
Yeah, certifications.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So obviously these days, when everyone hiring needs a certification, that's there's really no avoiding them, unfortunately. I would
Like they are
say it's
they are
sorry.
becoming a market trend right now. Like everyone likes to have some certain certifications to show off their skills. So, is it really required to do that, or one can just learn things and do not just show off certifications?
Obviously one can learn things. Um, and there's some great platforms for learning that don't have certs. But the the good thing about certs is that if you're getting them from an established authority, you can just present the cert, and it's pretty good proof that know what you're doing in that aspect. Like, if I was interviewing and someone came and they showed me that they had OSCP, I would know that they should at least be competent enough to do some basic network stuff, right? I wouldn't like immediately give them anything like a web app to test. I would expect to see something like the WAPTX, or even just WPA. Sorry, WPAT from eLearn. Potentially OSWE, although it is more code review. So, that kind of thing. I think it's definitely useful as proof. Because otherwise, if you know the stuff, but you don't have the certs, you're kind of almost shooting yourself in the foot because you've got to pass not only the HR filter, where they're going to see that you don't have any certs on your CV and think, well, do we even give this person an interview? So not only have you got to get past that, but in the interview, you've got to demonstrate your knowledge. Whereas if you had a cert, they may go slightly easier on you and make some assumptions. They, might not if you don't have a cert on your CV.
Okay. So, can you tell us a trick or tip that only you know related to penetration testing?
A trick?
Yeah.
um, I guess my tip, so not really a trick. Maybe a tip is that don't beat yourself up if you miss something. Um, it's especially true with doing web apps, I think, especially complicated web apps. The problem with pen testing versus just a regular attacker is we have limited time. And I try and tell this to customers is yes, we're pretending to be an attacker, but ultimately you've bought 3 days. An attacker may have 30. you know so I wouldn't, if you do miss something, and believe me, you're going to miss something. I've missed things. Every single pen tester I know has missed something. Sometimes it turns out to be critical, sometimes not. Um, but I wouldn't beat yourself up about it. It doesn't mean you're a bad pen tester. What I would suggest is you learn from it. So, you know, for instance, one time in like back in, oh goodness, this must have been 6, 7 years ago. I think I missed some cross-site request forgery on the web app, and the customer found it, and there was a whole, why didn't you guys find it? And it's like, sorry. But from what I took from that was, okay, well, that's something I need to start being more proactive about. And focusing more on cross-site request forgery and making it more part of my methodology. So that was how I learned from that experience. And so yeah.
So, according to you, what should be the perfect approach for pen testing a target?
There's no perfect approach. I think that's something we need to get out. There's nothing perfect about pen testing. We're humans. We're not running. We're not automating stuff. Or at least we're not automating pen testing. Automation is definitely a part of pen testing. You can run automated tools to help with pen testing, but the whole point of pen testing versus an automated vulnerability scan is you have a human sat there. And that can be an advantage, but it can also be a detriment. It's an advantage because a pen test is going to have some logic behind it that a vulnerability scan doesn't. But at the same time, we're humans, we're fallible, we're going to miss things, we're going to make assumptions that we shouldn't about things. And ultimately, we're not as fast as automated vulnerability scanning might be. And so there's going to be a delay. So I don't think there is a perfect methodology. I think what you should do coming in is obviously base your methodology off some kind of already established one. So, for instance, with web app security, and I'm just mentioning it because obviously that's what I know, you've got the OWASP methodology published. So you can start with that, certainly. I wouldn't advise just following it from page 1 all the way through to, I think, whatever, page 400 or something. Because honestly, it starts with enumeration, and if you if you followed every single step, you would basically spend the entire pen test just enumerating stuff and not actually exploiting anything. Um, so you have to just be adaptive. You really have to take a methodology, start with it, look at what you can do, look at anything you can improve, and learn from your mistakes. And I think, you're not going to get a perfect pen test. I don't think any pen test finds 100% of the vulnerabilities. I'm not even sure that's possible. But you know, the best you can do is follow some methodology and make improvements as you go along, and just learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, so one thing I was having in my mind is that people nowadays are starting with platforms like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box, participating in various CTFs. So they basically know that there is a vulnerability, and all they are going to do is just find it and exploit it. But in real life scenarios, we are even not sure that if there is going to be a vulnerability or not. So is it something good getting promoted, or these platforms should add machines where there is no vulnerability and people should, conclude that this machine is totally safe?
Yeah, that is the problem with CTFs and the whole CTF attitude, I guess. There's really no good solution, I would say. Obviously, you don't want to try Hack Me Room where you boot up the VM and be like, okay, have at it, and there's nothing wrong with the machine. Um, it might be interesting to have an exam where you're up front and say, there may be machines on the network which are not vulnerable. Because I definitely think teaching about time management is important. And that's, I guess, one thing I advise with the OSCP, because obviously going forward with the OSCP exam that all the 5 hosts are vulnerable. However, some of them will have red herrings,
Yeah.
and rabbit holes. And noticing that you're going down a rabbit hole is important. So I guess in that sense, that's kind of useful. What I would say though, when you're doing a machine on Try Hack Me or Portswigger, is don't just like plow ahead and exploit it and move on. Like look for what did you notice about the machine that caused you to think, okay, this is exploitable, and make that something that you focus on, because ultimately that's part of pen testing. Because we never approach pen testing thinking, okay, this machine has exploits, I need to find them. We approach it by saying, okay, what can we enumerate about this machine, and what clues can we determine from that enumeration, which give us the idea, okay, this might be exploitable. And so I think that's definitely something that people need to learn. It's definitely a big part of my web course I'm trying to write, in that, how do we initially detect these vulnerabilities and, determine that there might be something actually there, as opposed to just, throwing everything at it and saying, okay, well, this isn't vulnerable.
Yeah, the biggest problem I personally face in web pen testing is code review, when you have to, go through all the JavaScript code in the web app, and most of the time I really do not understand with basic understanding of JavaScript. So please add that code review thing as well if you can. That would be a, good thing for me.
Yeah, that's definitely tricky. Um, it's honestly, I don't think code review of the JavaScript should be a part of web application pen testing. I think you should determine firstly via the actual UI what you can do, because most of the JavaScript is going to be related to what you can actually do on the server. Um, sorry, the web app. But there's definitely some stuff you can review. Burp Suite actually does a pretty good job, especially Burp Suite Pro, of trying to flag anything suspicious. They've actually, and I haven't used this yet because I think it's only in the alpha release or the dev release of Burp Suite Pro. They have a new extension for their built-in Chrome browser. I forget what it's called, but it's something to do with the document object model, DOM, and it tries to find DOM-based cross-site scripting, which is obviously, when you're talking about JavaScript code review, that's the main thing you're looking for. So there's definitely something like that that would help. Apparently, it's very good, and it finds DOM XSS as easily as reflected XSS. This is what they claim. So I think that's going to be super useful. So I would definitely look into that. But otherwise, yeah, JavaScript review is difficult. There are several tools you can use, especially like the debuggers in Chrome and Firefox. If you've ever used those, being able to set breakpoints on the JavaScript and walk through it line by line and see where values are going is definitely useful for that kind of thing. But if you have a really complicated web app and you're only testing it for 3 or 4 days, you should really limit any kind of JavaScript code review unless it's specifically part of the scope. Because honestly, there's probably more you can find somewhere else. And like I've said before, with pen testing, there's no guarantee of finding everything. You have pretty much just limited time. So there are some things you're not gonna find, and there's some things you're just not gonna focus on.
Okay, so we have reached the end of this session, and would you like to add anything up, Tiberius?
Oh, I'm not sure now. I guess I could speak about my social media. So I am on Twitter. It's basically 0x Tiberius with a 3. I have a Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/0x Tiberius, and obviously a YouTube, which is actually just youtube.com/Tiberius. So yeah, I am pretty active on Twitter. I am moderately active on Twitch. I really need to get back into streaming, and I try and be as active as I can on YouTube. But yeah, those are the main socials that I use. And obviously, I have a Discord channel. You can find that on my Twitter account. So yeah, if you want to get in touch, I'm happy to talk about pretty much anything with anyone in my Discord channel. So yeah, but thank you very much for interviewing me.
Yeah, so definitely I'll provide all the links to social handle in the description. So thank you so much, Tiberius, for your time. It was a great experience for me talking with you. It's just amazing to see that even with such a tight schedule, you're giving time to the community. Thank you very much, Tiberius.
Thank you.